जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम सामीन। मैं सूरह बकरा के 10 आयतों की इंग्लिश में ट्रांसलेशन आपके सामने पेश करता हूँ। मीर अहमद अली साहब का ट्रांसलेट किया हुआ कुरान है। In the name of Allah, most benevolent, ever merciful. Alif Lam Mim. This is a book free of doubt and involution, guidance for those who preserve themselves from evil and follow the straight path, who believe in the unknown and fulfill their obligations and spend in charity of what we give them, who believe in what has been revealed to you and what was revealed to those before you and are certain of the hereafter. They have found the guidance of their Lord and will be successful. As for those who deny, it is all the same. If you warn them or not, they will not believe. God has sealed their hearts and ears and veiled their eyes from them. For them is great deprivation. And there are some who, though they say we believe in God and last day, in reality do not believe. Try to deceive God, and those who believe yet deceive none but themselves, although they do not know. Sick are their hearts, and God adds to their melody. For them is suffering for their lie. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Muhammad.
जी 10 आयतों की इंग्लिश की ट्रांसलेशन कंप्लीट हो गई है। अब हम शुरू कर सकते हैं नहजुल बलागा का सेशन।
जी जज़ाकल्लाह जज़ाकल्लाह
जज़ाकल्लाह। अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहिल्लज़ी ला यब्लुगुहु मिदहतहुल क़ाइलून व लियुहसिना अमाअहुल आद्दून व ला युअद्दी हक़्क़हुल मुज्तहिदून الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميادان أرضه أول الدين معرفته ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خير المبشرين والمنذرين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
على آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dearest Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, my elders, my youngers, peers, respected viewers and listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we will be continuing with our study of Nahjul Balagha. Allow me one moment to start the slideshow. Dearest Mu'mineen Mu'minat, last time we were discussing the first sermon and we were looking at the creation of angels. Now we will continue with the creation of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and see what Amir al-Mu'mineen as-salatu was-salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, has mentioned about the creation of Hazrat Adam. The first thing to note is that it is mentioned repeatedly in the Quran. So what we see is that the creation of Hazrat Adam, the tests that were taken, as the story unfolded and the events took place, we see that it is a very, very important lesson. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings with a social nature and a nature of telling stories. You will note that we often pass knowledge, traditions, and wisdom through stories. There are morals in the stories, and stories are a way that we raise our young. So indeed, the story and the storytelling is very dear to the human heart and part of the human learning process. When we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this story many a time in various surahs, and for various reasons, we see that there is definitely something here we must pay a lot of attention to. In fact, I think that if we can spend our life understanding this first story that unfolds in the creation of human beings and their entire trials and tribulations from the highest level in the heavens to the earth, and then hopefully going back towards heaven again. An amazing journey where we see that the origin returns to its origin. So we see that where we begin is where we are meant to return as the circle of life completes itself, and so does the circle of our creation. When we look at Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and what Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, and one moment, I just have to, I think, go back a bit. So and this is where we begin. We see that Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying Allah created Hazrat Adam from hard, soft, sweet, and sour earth. Now, the qualities that Amir al-Mu'mineen is mentioning here are really quite amazing and noteworthy, because you will see that when we look at these qualities, they are describing, the materials that were used to build something. When one sees any product, creation, or even product or something that one is manufacturing in this world, when we look at those things, what we notice is that to know the materials and the qualities of everything that is present there requires intimate knowledge. And the way Amir al-Mu'mineen as-salatu wassalamu alayhi is describing the qualities that were put into the clay is showing us someone who either was given complete knowledge of the way the process unfolded, or somebody who was witnessing the process unfolding, or rather somebody who was part of Allah's medium for causing the process to happen. This means that when Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing how all of this came together, that is incredible. Now, I have a car, you have a car, we drive a car, but it will be the one who is manufacturing it, or the one who is in the factory present and watching it being assembled, who will be able to tell you the amazing parts that have come together to make this car. And when we're looking at the clay that is being described here, clay in itself is the material of our body. So the material of our body taken from clay of the earth, which means that the earth in which we are, where we are born and where we are buried back again, this is the material that is coming into our being. So it shows us an intimate connection with the earth as well. And this shows us that our elements within us, the minerals within us, are similar to the elements and the minerals and the various chemicals within the earth. And it also shows us how important it is for us, therefore, to take from the earth and to strengthen our bodies with it. So we see that what we often eat is vegetation, for example, and herbs and vegetables and fruits and nuts. And these things are incredibly useful to us and useful to our body because of that connection we have. So when we realize our connection to the earth, it makes it more understandable why we should be having certain nutrition and not certain nutrition. When we look at DNA itself, Amir al-Mu'mineen did not talk about DNA here directly, although DNA itself is one of the most amazing things about the human body. When we look at DNA and we realize it is nothing but a computer program, it is nothing but a program like a computer program, meaning that when you create a computer software, there is programming, and that programming manifests in how the software is applied and utilized. In the same way, within the human being, we can see that there is a programming, and the programming of DNA is to cause a structure to form. That means that your body is made of the basic biomolecules, which we like to call in nutrition carbs, fats, and proteins. Carbs, fats, and proteins are what we are made of, as we can see. Other animals are also made of that, and all biological species. Anything, even in botany, we see that plants and fruits and vegetables, they are made of carbs, fats, and proteins. Even a tree made of carbs, fats, and proteins, and the animals and birds, fish, etc. So when we look at ourselves and we see we are made of carbs, fats, and proteins, and this is formed, and really proteins are the main structure of your body. So we would say that DNA is a recipe for proteins. Therefore, your entire structure is made according to the programming of DNA. What is amazing about this is that in the programming of DNA, what we notice is that it has been the same program transmitted from generation to generation from Hazrat Adam alayhi salam up till now. And when we started to make our own computer programs in recent generations, we realized that in our programming, there were many mistakes that were to manifest later that we would realize, and then we would need constant software updates and new versions. And we see that happening with all applications and software that we're using. And in the beginning, there may have been more updates, and perhaps as we gain better knowledge of the mistakes that will occur, we change the programming. But the amazing thing about DNA is that it has not changed. And that means that from generation to generation for thousands of years, that programming is always continuing nonstop. Or rather, we could say that there is absolutely no changes that were needed, and that's because of the fact that Allah's creation is perfect. So to be able to have a DNA that is able to make proteins that will allow a human to function in the Stone Age, in the Iron Age, in the Industrial Age, in the age of information and scientific exploration and so on, when we see the DNA is always manifesting itself in the right way, it shows us an incredibly intricate programming, and it shows us that the programming would have required knowledge of everything that is to happen from the beginning to the end. So when we say that he collected from hard, soft, sweet, and sour earth, which he dripped in water till it got pure and kneaded with moisture till it became gluey. If you look at this description, it is incredible. To look at the quality and to know the moisture and to know the gluiness, I have to be there. Or somebody needs to give me complete explanations of this. So who would be able to tell us this unless it is the one who was present and the one who himself was a medium for creation? Because when we look at taking the different clays, dripped in water and kneading it, all these words that are used are not perhaps literal, like we may need dough, for example, to make bread. However, they are showing us that there's maybe a metaphorical representation here, but still, to be able to describe it as gluey, like how does one do that unless one is very much over there? When we look at, when we read Tafsir al-Imam Hassan al-Askari as-salatu was-salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, and we look at various other narrations, we note that Amir al-Mu'mineen as-salatu was-salamu alayhi has said, and he has said that it was him who kneaded the dough of Adam. And what that did was that told us that it's not Allah who will do it, for Allah does not have hands. Therefore, when Allah is going to use a medium to have it kneaded, there will be something involved. So there is Allah and there is the clay. Now the clay is being kneaded, the clay is being formed, the clay is being mixed. When we look at this kneading and mixing, the question is, could Allah do it just by a force and a will where there is no need for maybe a masoom to come and use their hands, where we say it was Amir al-Mu'mineen who did this, where we say it was the Yadullah who did this? Is there a need for that? Well, perhaps not. One could say that no, Allah is all-powerful, almighty, and he is able to exert his will in any form and manner which he wishes. If he wishes, that clay would just mix, and whoever was looking at it would see it mixing by itself and the clay of Hazrat Adam forming. Now, as that is happening, the thing we note is still that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used a force. That means there was some medium that was used nonetheless. I mean, we may call it his will, we call it his might, his force, his power. We may choose whatever word to use, but there was some kind of a medium. That means it was not Allah there with his hands doing it. Rather, there was some metaphysical force and nobody saw anything because the angels are there. So the angels might be seeing Hazrat Adam being made. So when that is happening, they may be seeing nothing at all. However, even that force itself is a medium. So the thing is that we have to separate that medium from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has been the focus of our entire journey in understanding Tawheed, in that he is separate from all the mediums that he uses and all the qualities that we attribute to him. He is basically oneness itself, so nothing can be separated from him. But if we are in discussing something that is like a medium, then a medium or a wasila becomes something that is separate from him. Therefore, we would have to say that even the force was something, it was something else. So Allah used something to create Hazrat Adam, a force. Well then, the one who is understanding the relationship between Allah creation and the Masumin as the intermedium and the wasila is understanding that that force can be given a name. So whether it takes on the physical form of two hands and a person with two hands actually kneading the clay themselves, or perhaps whether it is a metaphysical force that is unseen, but it is somehow kneading the clay, even then, both of them, I would give the name Amirul Mu'mineen to, because he said, I was the one who did it, which means he is claiming to be the medium for the creation of Hazrat Adam, which means he is separating the medium from Allah. So it is not that, you know, Amirul Mu'mineen is, you know, somehow trying to, he doesn't need to raise his status before us that, oh, look, this is what I did. So when Amirul Mu'mineen tells us, I did this, it is not to elevate his own status. His status is elevated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is called Ali by the one who is Aliul Ala. His name is elevated. And who named him elevated? The most elevated. So what can we say about his status? But what he is doing is actually trying to explain Tawheed to us. So from it, he carved an image with curves, joints, limbs, segments, parts, and solidified it, dried up for a fixed time in a known duration. So there is a fixed time that was appointed, and there was a known duration. And this tells us that the one who is saying this is aware of the timing and the durations as well for how long everything occurred. And that's why we see narrations of it. We certainly see narrations of the time mentioned regarding how long Hazrat Adam's clay was prepared. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who can say be and it is, kun fayakun. So therefore, for him to apply this where he is not saying be and it is, rather he is causing stages, is showing us that the creation that he is bringing into being right now is one that will develop through stages. And he has caused these stages because he wants us to see that our life will be in stages, our tests will be in stages, our existence will go through these phases. And we may not be aware of what was happening in the previous stage or the next stage, but we are aware of our current stage. And it is the Masumin salatu wassalamu alayhi who have told us about what is happening in the previous stage or what's going to happen in the next stage and so on. However, it becomes very important for us to realize that because it allows us to be a little more humble and allows us to realize our limitations, which does make it a little easier to have realistic expectations in life and to live a life of peace and happiness. Because at the end of the day, that is basically what we want. And we see in Surah Sad, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي خَالِقٌ بَشَرٌ مِّن طِينٍ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قَالَ رَبُّكَ وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ, and when said your Lord, لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, to the angels, إِنِّي, indeed I, خَالِقٌ, will create, بَشَرٌ, I will create a man, min teen, from clay. So this was the declaration in Surah Sad, Surah number 38, verse number 71, where we see Amir al-Mu'mineen mentioning it in this Nahjul Balagha sermon. He is a mixture of clays of different colors and cohesive materials. You see, this is where we see this is where we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting together differences, opposites, things of different qualities. And who would be able to describe these qualities unless we had intimate knowledge of how human beings were created? And the interesting part is that there are cohesive materials, materials that come together, and there are also divergent contradictories, which means there are things within us that contradict each other. So likenesses and similarities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no likeness and he has no opposite, as we have said before, according to the narrations of the Masameen salatu wassalamu alayhi. Therefore, when we are looking at ourselves, it is very interesting to note chemically and physically, in the world of chemistry and physics, where we see forces in nature. And when we look at chemistry, we see opposite chemicals attract and like charges repel. For example, when we look at physics, we see that electromagnetism is created by negative and positive charges, which gives us energy, which powers our cities and our industrial civilizations with electricity. So then when we look at this, it is interesting to note that even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done that, many things we still don't perhaps fully understand why. And for example, when we say our body is filled with opposites, then we note that your body is made of a nervous system that controls everything that happens within you. And it is based on what we call electrical charge. But it is because of the movement of positive charges and negative charges in and out of a cell, which causes our cells to become negative and positive. So everything we do and everything that powers us is the power of the opposites. At the same time, we also see things that are similar within us as well. We note that the lungs are a cooling station and our heart is very warm. They're opposite in temperature. We can see in our body, there are areas that are soft and hard. We see the softness of the skin and the fascia underneath. We see the hardness of bone. And like our body is made of hard and soft, and so is our heart, where we see grief and joy. And to think that we can live a life with only one of these, grief and not, or joy and not grief, it does not make sense. So it shows us that within our physical being, if there are opposites and hardness and softness and heat and cold, then how can we expect that in our life's journey, we will not see those opposites? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who wants us to know peace and wants us to know joy, will show us peace by showing us turmoil, by showing us difficulties. He will show us happiness by showing us sadness. He will show us joy by giving us grief as well. So these are opposites of each other that will continue to unfold within our everyday journey as we continue to experience things and feel all of this. So there is a certain comfort in it and a certain level of acceptance when we see that it has been put into the very creation of our being. We talk about opposites and likes, and we say opposites attract and likes repel. Yet when we look at the neutron of an atom at the explosion of a star, we see that the nucleus of an atom, is made of many protons. Basic chemistry in school, in middle school, teaches us that the basic atomic models show us that there is going to be a nucleus. And in the nucleus of any atom that is present in any element, there are a certain number of, well, one proton or more, and neutrons as well. Interesting to note is that protons are positively charged. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken positively charged neutrons and put them all together. And yet he has created the forces in such that the likenesses should repel. So should not a proton repel another proton? Yet how is it that we see in the elements, especially in the ones that come with the heavier atomic numbers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has caused energy to force protons together? I mean, we learn in school the protons are in the middle, the electrons are on the outside, positive in the center, negative outside, and that's why the negative revolves around the positive, like something like these planets around the sun, or now we have other theories and atomic models to explain the movement of electrons. But what we are seeing is that in the nucleus, you have these which are protons, yet Allah has forced them together. So it begs the question, in a universe in which the laws of nature are such that likeness should repel, how are we seeing protons together? I mean, sure, the neutrons play a role in there, but and then what we see is that when we look at the proton, it is made of subatomic particles in which there are negatives and positives attached together. So at the deepest level, there's still a negative and positive. In fact, all of creation in its simplest sense can be boiled down to two things, a negative particle and a positive particle. And just from these two letters, it's like two letters of an alphabet. You have the subatomic particles of the parts of the quarks, perhaps, if we will, the parts of the proton, which are quarks, or if we can divide it further than that, or we can keep on dividing it, we will get to a plus and minus. And at the end, everything around us is more and more of these pluses and minuses. That in itself is incredible, because this universe is a creation of Allah, but is it perhaps the only way that Allah would create a universe? It is the only reality that would exist, but that's not true, because when we look at 26 letters in the alphabet, we see that with 26 letters, we can make volumes and volumes of literature, books and books and books. These are two letters. And with two letters, Allah has created incredibleness, because our vocabulary and our words, though amazing, are limited. They can be put into dictionaries, and therefore you have a limitation of how many words there would be in a language. But when we look at two letters, and to create the entire universe with all of these variable colors and rays and forces and elements and materials and different kinds of life, and all that is happening around us, it's basically from two letters of an alphabet. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed us all of his, well, the letters are infinite, but if you took another two letters, there would be a universe completely different from ours. And so we see the contradictories. Then we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen goes on to say that after the creation of Hazrat Adam, Allah asked the angels to fulfill the promise they had made to him, and to accomplish the pledge, which was the ahad that they had made by acknowledging him through prostration to him. You will note that in the translation here, the translator has capitalized his and him, indicating it is Allah. So they acknowledged Allah and prostrated to Allah and submitted to Allah. This is definitely a precaution, I would say, on the part of the translator, in the sense that when we look at the tafsir of our Masumeen, if, for example, in Tafsir al-Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, salatu wassalamu alayhi, and so on, in other tafsir as well, we will see that when our Masumeen were asked about this, for example, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, salatu wassalamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, was asked about this. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salatu wassalamu alayhi, was asked about this. Sheikh Saduq has noted this. We see that the Imam said that the angels prostrated to Hazrat Adam in a literal sense, but it was intended for Allah. So it was a worship to Allah. The direction was the direction that Allah told them to prostrate. So what it shows us is that, because one cannot deny that the prostration was to Hazrat Adam, it's in the Quran we see. And we see that, here, when we look at the basic, in Surah Swad again, when we see the creation here, verses 72, 73, 74, we were just looking at verse 71 of Surah Swad, فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ, and then when I form it, وَنَفَخْتُ, and then I blow fihi, in it, مِن رُوحِي, from my spirit, فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. Amir al-Mu'mineen explains very clearly what is the abilities and the qualities of the ruhi, his spirit that he has blown into it. فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, and there all of you will fall into sajda. فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ, and did sajda all of the angels, كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ, all of them, illa, except for somebody. Now, Iblis. Iblis was not an angel. Perhaps that is why we see his name written in a different verse. Again, in the tafsir, we have seen the Ma'asumeen salatu wassalamu alayhi have told us that Iblis is a jinn, therefore he's made of fire, and Iblis declares this himself as well, saying that khalaqtani min nar, you have created me from nar, fire, and we know the angels are created from light. So it's a very interesting time where we see that you have the angels of light, you have Iblis of fire. So there are creation of light, there are creation of fire, and excuse me. And we see Hazrat Adam, the creation of clay comes into being, and it becomes a competitive environment. So now we see that the competition is there, and this new being that has come in, made of clay, is the angels claim themselves to be better. They didn't say it, but it was hidden within their words, as we'll see. I'll come to that. And Iblis openly declares himself to be better. The angels did not openly declare it, but it was there. And this will be explained in the upcoming verse, right over here. So now I'm going to Surah Baqarah. And in Surah Baqarah, we see verse number 30 onwards. And when your Lord said to the angels, I'm going to place a Khalifa on earth. And they said, this is where they objected, قالوا, and they said, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا? Will you place here one that will do yufsid, will do fasad, will do mischief, فِيهَا وَيُسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ, and will shed blood. وَنَحْنُ, but we, نُسَبِّحُ, we celebrate thy praise, بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, and we extol thy holiness. So what they're saying here is that, are you going to make him Khalifa when he's going to do this and we do this, without directly saying that we want to be the Khalifa? Yet interestingly, what happens is they were still punished. Now, what were they punished for is also a question. And that comes up as well, because we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then goes on after the creation of Hazrat Adam. They were not asked to prostrate until he had proved why they should prostrate, why they should do sajda in that situation, why he is making Hazrat Adam the Khalifa, why from the creation of fire, the creation of light, and the creation of clay, Allah has chosen this one, although this one is but a new one compared to the previous ones. The previous ones were already there. The angels were there for how long? We don't even know. Millennia. I would assume thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. Iblis himself, we see, was there for many years. Before the creation of Hazrat Adam, we see that Iblis was present for at least 14,000 years, if not more. Perhaps it may go on to over 50,000 when we add up some other narrations. But there is one narration we can see in which Iblis is saying that I was present on earth for 7,000 years with my nation, and then my nation was destroyed. Then I was present on the first level of heaven for another 7,000, the second level of heaven for another 7,000. That comes out to at least 21,000 years, if not more. What's interesting is that because Iblis is to be our enemy was present before us. Allah not only had our enemy present before us, but he was continuously elevated in status. In a manner, he was being prepared. So although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just, so whatever Iblis is doing, he is fully to blame for it. But we see that Allah is letting him worship, but Iblis is not truly worshiping. Otherwise, he would not have fallen from grace. There was a very important lesson that Iblis did not learn in his worship of Allah. And so when we see that, we see that in a manner of speaking, let me say that Allah is preparing our enemy before we are even created. Before we are even born, our enemy is present. And that is the way in which Allah has done many things. He creates death and then life. So we see death was created before life. And therefore, Allah is creating the enemy of insan before and making him knowledgeable. We see that he is Iblis in his years gains a lot of experience and learns a lot. What a big advantage he has. This is unfair play almost. This is like you have taken, an adult and put him up against a child in a game, in a sport, in a physical sport where a 30-year-old is now going to play a sport against a 2-year-old. That's not a fair competition. Hazrat Adam comes into being, and now Iblis is there ready to be his enemy, and he has been there from before. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen this way. And the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. In our Quran, it is said that, the Mazlum is the one who will finally come to be made the Khalifa, the one who was suppressed and oppressed. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not chosen to, otherwise the creation of light, it would have made sense for the creation of light and the angels to be the mightiest beings and to be his caliphs, but rather they are not. They are doing his service. They are doing things and duties that basically require them to, follow human beings and do things. You have angels that are writing your good deeds and bad deeds. They are angels of light. They are creations that are from a superior material than clay. Shouldn't they not be? Perhaps we should be secretaries. Are they not sitting there watching you and noting everything down? These are not, powerful stations. These are stations of service. Civil service, you could say, in a manner of speaking, comparing it in our society. So when we see that big difference, we note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his infinite wisdom, is giving us many lessons. But one thing I can see here is that it is not about our, you could say, material, but rather there's something else within the human being. And they said, قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. Now, one moment where I go back to that verse here, right over here. So, وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها, and he taught them the names. So this is where we see the distinction. The distinction is that this clay, this being of clay, is being taught certain names. And from those certain names comes the superiority, one could say, or one could say the reason for being made the caliph of the earth, even though the angels also claimed it, and Iblis also claimed his superiority. And Allah said, now tell me the names, if you are truthful. He said, and then he said to them, Ambiyuni bi asma'i ha'ula'i in kuntum sadiqin. Ambiyuni, tell me then these names, if you are truthful. So that means that if they were truthful in their claim, they could have told the names. Yet there was something that was hidden that they didn't mention, which is why in that sense they were not truthful. Although the angels did not lie, so not in that sense, but there was something that they hid. And this comes up as well in the verses. And they said that glory be to thee. Indeed, you are the all-knowing and you are the wise. So therefore, we only know what you have taught us. So Hazrat Adam was taught by the angels. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels were taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet we see a difference. And what is the difference? Now, when a teacher teaches and a teacher takes a test, it would not be just for that teacher to teach one student something more and teach the other student something less. And it would not even prove Hazrat Adam's superiority fully or the benefits of this clay. So there is something in this clay we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining to us. And that is what Hazrat Adam does. And then, قَالَ يَا آدَمُ أَنْبِئْهُمْ بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. Oh, Adam, tell them about these names. Now, Allah knows Hazrat Adam will tell them the names, because Allah's words to the angels were, tell me the names if you know, if you are truthful. And to Hazrat Adam, he says, oh, Adam, tell angels the names. So he knows Hazrat Adam will tell angels the names. And then what happens is he says, قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ. And then he says, and did I not say to you, إِنِّي عَلَمُ, indeed I know, غَيْبَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, what is hidden in the skies and the earth. وَأَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ, and I am aware of what you are manifesting and what you are hiding. This is where our Masum says in our tafsir that regarding this verse, what the angels were hiding was their desire to be made Khalifa, which they didn't express, but expressed in an indirect way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that they were hiding that. And he is telling them that this is what you were hiding. And it was that desire, although they were not worthy of it. If they were worthy of it, Allah would have made them the caliph. He did not choose to make them the caliph, therefore they were not worthy of it. And if they are not worthy of it, they should not have desired and objected to Allah's decision. Therefore, that was the reason the angels were given the punishment of tawaf of the Baitul Ma'mur. For 7,000 years they did tawaf, and it is said that to represent those 7,000 years, we do tawaf of the Kaaba 7 times. So therefore, there is also within human beings this nature where they want something and a status that maybe they are not worthy of, maybe something that is elevated to them. So again, it shows us the importance of knowing our place in the creations, knowing where we stand. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. And he said to all the angels, therefore do sajda to Hazrat Adam. All did except for Iblis, astakbara. And he did astakbara, which means that he was proud. He did takabbur. He was arrogant. And he became one of the unbelievers. The one who had been doing sajda to Allah for thousands and thousands of years, refusing to do one sajda to Allah's Khalifa, although it was prostration to Allah, it would be considered worship to Allah. But the fact that you have a medium now in between you and Allah is what Iblis is not liking. Up till now, Iblis's sajda, sujood, were without this medium of a leader before him, a Khalifa before him, to follow a Nabi, an Imam, a Masoom. This is what requires humbleness, and the opposite of it, to not follow, is takabbur. So therefore we see that the takabbur of Iblis was that he refused the representative of Allah. And because of that, he was an unbeliever despite his constant sajdas to Allah. And although he did believe in Allah, the fascinating thing is that Iblis knows that Allah exists. He converses with him in the verses. He says to Allah, "Khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min tin." You created me from fire. Iblis in the Quran acknowledges his creation, acknowledges that Allah created him. He says to Allah as he leaves, he says that I will beguile and cause deviation of Hazrat Adam and his offspring. And I swear upon your might. Iblis believes in the might of Allah. Yet Allah is calling him a kafir. That is incredible. And so why is Allah calling him a kafir then? This is what he did, takabbur, and he refused to follow the rule of Allah. So iman and kufr is not just about believing in tawheed. It is about following the appointed representative of Allah. So one moment while I come back to the actual sermon. Yes. So then Allah asked the angels, and then what we see is that Iblis did not do this. Amir al-Mu'mineen explains it, of course, beautifully. Self-importance withheld him. So this is the reason Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing the mistakes of Iblis. It was self-importance that withheld him, and vice overcame him. So now what is the vice? The vice is his refusal and his objection. He took pride in his own creation with fire and treated contemptuously the creation of clay. So we see that it is now his idea that I am superior to Hazrat Adam because of my being. And we see this not just in Iblis, the jinn, but we see this in human beings till now. In this day of civilization and technology and advancement, where we can speak with any human being on the planet in one moment, where we can access any information that people have come up with, any knowledge, any technology, just by searching for it in our internet highway of information. In this day and age where we should be far more advanced, we note that racism is still a big issue of our time. One of the biggest issues of our time. And we see that basically Iblis is not a racist, but he's a speciesist, he's a xenophobe, he is basically considering himself to be superior from another alien creature. So at least he had an excuse in the sense that he was a different creation. What excuse do we have? We are made from the same clay. He was made from fire. And so Allah allowed him time in order to let him fully deserve his wrath. And that means Allah said, go, you have time till waqt al-ma'loom, and which probably means the day of judgment, or before that, we know also towards the end of Zuhur and the Raj'at, there will be the Iblis will get his due. We will see him getting his due in that time, even before Qiyamah, and then on Qiyamah again. So Allah allowed him, and to complete man's test and to fulfill the promise. So therefore he used now Iblis is going to be used by Allah as the test of human beings. And who is Iblis? The one who is worshiping Allah more than any of the other jinn that had been present, and all of his fellow jinn. And verily we have allowed you a time. Surah Sa'ad, again, we see the same thing. Interestingly, we see that when Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq salatu wassalamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad, was asked about this this claim that Iblis made, that I am greater than him. Khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min teen. Why should I do sajda to him? He should do sajda to me, in other words. Then Imam was asked, is that true? Is nar greater than clay, than teen? Is there a superiority of it? And the Imam gave a simple explanation. The Imam said, have you not read Surah Yasin, in which it says, you'll have to forgive me for in my pasting on the verses here, I did not notice that the first letters of these verses is missing, or even the first word in some of them. So Alladhi, and when we look at this verse, it says Alladhi, he is the one ja'ala lakum, who has made for you min ash-shajar, from the tree, akhdari, the green tree, naran, fire. Fa'idha, so that antum, you can, minhu, from this, tu'qidun, take benefit. So that you will benefit from this, you can create fire from this, and you can live your life. Fire, a big part of our life. So our Imam said this, and when our Imam said this, the man said, I don't understand, what's the explanation here? And the explanation was simple. Cause is always superior to effect, in the sense that we know that, for example, when we look at the creation of everything, Allah is the ultimate cause. And so therefore, if he caused the Masumin, then the Masumin are then superior to anything that comes after. And therefore, if he creates the heavens and the skies and the angels, etc., after the Masumin, salatu wassalamu alayhi, we see they are the cause of everything coming after, so they are superior. We see that we have to respect our parents, we have to obey them. They are the cause of us. Allah is showing us that although he created us, he has used a cause and a medium. We should always respect that cause. And so the cause of the fire, which is now again the material from which Iblis is made, is fire. And the cause of the fire is the tree itself. So therefore the tree needs to be kindled for fire to occur. So the tree becoming the cause becomes superior in that sense. And then we see that the material of fire, therefore, is not superior to the material of the tree. The tree gives birth to the fire. And the material of the tree is not superior to the material of the clay, of the earth, because the earth is what gives life to the tree. And human beings are made from the clay. So Iblis is not only wrong, he is actually two levels off, because superior to fire is tree and superior to tree is clay. So Iblis was wrong in his conjecture, and even if he had been right, because it's hard for me to argue that Nur is not superior to clay. Who wouldn't want to be made of Nur? Nur is that magnificent light. Nur is something that we know the Masumina salatu wassalamu alayhi are. Nur is, the angels are made of this. Nur we will maybe see in Yawm al-Qiyamah in heaven. What is Nur? Many like me have not even witnessed it yet, but no, we see that even the angels did not have that quality that was given to Hazrat Adam, that was given to that clay. And that clay is that which now we see on the earth is the basis of all life. All life springs from this, all life goes back into this. So now that's what we see of the earth and the clay, and as everything comes out and going back in. But what did Allah put in Hazrat Adam and in the human beings that has caused them to have this distinction, that has caused them to be, able to do something that the others would not do? So that comes up as well, because we see that Amirul Mu'mineen explains that beautifully when he talks about the ruh. And we'll come to that later as we look at Amir al-Mu'mineen's explanation of the qualities of ruh. When nafaqtu fihi min ruhi, as I blow my spirit into it. Amir al-Mu'mineen as-salatu wassalamu alayhi goes on to say, thereafter Allah inhabited Hazrat Adam in a house where he made his life pleasant and his stay safe. I will come back to the, to the ilm lana and what he had put in him. or one moment. No, I believe that slide I might have skipped over in my excitement. Let me just go there. Ah, yes, this one, I believe. Yes, I somehow missed this. Okay, we'll spend a little time here as well, although I'll be concluding in 5 minutes. Then he blew into it out of his spirit. So this is when نفخت فيه من روحي ثم نفخ فيها من روحه. And what it took was the pattern of a human being. So therefore we see that our ruh came into our ruh is in our body, as we see Hazrat Adam's ruh. Now that ruh is coming into his body, taking on the pattern of a human being. That might indicate that the shape that it takes on now may be similar to the mold of our body as it comes into us. And then what we see is that it is with a mind. So the intellect is coming in with this ruh as well. So the ruh is bringing intellect, aql as we call it. So aql is one of the most important aspects of us indeed. And when we look at aql, we see its importance. In itself, aql is such an important and incredible concept. And in our books, you know, when we look at our, for example, Al-Kafi, and when we look at the, you know, what everything and how it's been explained, we will see that Babul Aql is, you know, the first thing that it talks about. So Aql, to understand intellect and what it is the first thing we need to do. Then from that, we can utilize this ability and see what it's for. What is intelligence and what is it for? Is intelligence the ability to pass an IQ test? Because the word intelligence is highly misrepresented in this society today. We tend to think of intelligence in many different ways, and some of them vague and abstract, and even our tests for it, you know, what we're testing for is deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning. We're testing to see patterns. You see a triangle, a square, what is the next shape? You see numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, what is the next number? You see a word problem and we have to solve it. Much of this is perhaps part of intelligence in our biological definition of intelligence, but in the metaphysical definition of intelligence, where we are looking at what is coming in from the ruhi, that's intellect. The brain is already there. Hazrat Adam has already been created. His brain is there, his body is there, the intellect is not there. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ is where the creation is made. And now the physical form is there. When he says فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ, then we do not see intellect. We see intellect when it comes to وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. This is again, this is also further solidified at the time when Hazrat Adam, it says, and we see this in Babul Aql, in Asul al-Kafi, Shaykh Qulani, alayhi rahman, you know, mentions the narration. And what happens is we see our Imam Jafar as-Sadiq salatu wassalamu alayhi is saying that Hazrat Adam is there, and Hazrat Jibreel comes to Hazrat Adam and says, "Oh Adam, what would you like?" before coming to earth. And this may have even been, you know, temporally before going into heaven as well. We see it is said that, "Oh Adam, I come to you with 3 angels. Which of these would you like?" Allah said, "Choose one." And one is aql, one is deen, and one is haya. Incredible. Incredible, because these 3 things are now telling us what Allah's priorities are and qualities. So what do I consider as a priority of quality? It may be having a good physical form. It may be having certain, you know, a strength in a certain way I look, or maybe having a good voice, or there's various things that we consider as important. But aql, deen, and haya, this is what Allah is gifting to Hazrat Adam. And he is asking him, which of these would you prefer? Hazrat Adam already has that aql, if we think about it, because the intellect was there. And the intellect that was there in Hazrat Adam was an intellect of such level that he was able to recognize Allah. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And he taught Adam all the names. And Hazrat Adam said, هَذَا Mahmud, هَذَا Muhammad. And when he looked at that, he was pointing, and there was a light. And that was the light that was Hazrat Muhammad. And that was one of the names that was taught by Allah. When we look at another Tafsir al-Qummi, for example, we see regarding this verse, it is said that the names that were taught were the names of the Masumin, the prophets, and the Mu'mineen, the Shias. These were the names that were taught. Interestingly, the narration doesn't mention the name of Allah was taught. Therefore, if that is then assumed, and we do not know of any narration in which it was said the names of Allah were taught, then one will have to say that Hada Muhammad was what was taught, but Antal Mahmud was the intellectual capacity of that being of clay that was able to recognize the one who is ghaib from that which is manifest, from that which is zahir to connect it to that which is ghaib. This was the incredible quality that Hazrat Adam manifested on that day of the test, where he proved his superiority to the angels and definitely to Iblis as well. Hada Muhammad wa Antal Mahmud. And in saying that, he also acknowledged the medium. That through this medium, oh Allah, I am recognizing you. Iblis was denying the medium. Iblis did not want to accept the Khalifatullah. He did not want to accept Hujjatullah. He did not want to accept the one appointed by Allah. Yet we see Hazrat Adam is immediately accepting the medium and recognizing that I am recognizing you through the light of the Masumin salatu wassalamu alayh. So to reach that intelligence was there. Yet when we look and we see deen, haya, and aql are presented, these three must be so important. Haya is gone from our society now. We see that it is something that if we hold on to, we are perhaps considered as being oppressed. If we hold on to it, we are considered as being backward. And there is a certain joy in shamelessness that we see everyone running towards on our planet today. And so how important is haya? And what is haya? And what does it mean? And how should it affect us? And how should it affect where I look and where I don't look? How should it affect how I dress and how I don't dress? All of these things come under haya. And how should it affect how I behave with everybody around me? So it is an entire word that could actually dictate and allow us to lead a successful life, just haya itself. And deen is incredible. What does Hazrat Adam take? O Adam alayhi salam, who is the prophet of Allah, the Khalifatullah, the one who has just had prostration by the angels, who is this one? And should he not take deen? He is to come to the earth and spread deen. Is he not the prophet? Indeed, he is the prophet. He does not take deen. He says, I will take aql. This is also the aql of Hazrat Adam, allowing him to do this when he takes the aql, showing you that the most important quality of your representatives of Allah is that intellect, far superior to anyone who they will guide. And then Jibreel says, you have chosen the wise one. You have made the wise choice, O Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, because Allah, and then what happened was, excuse me, let me repeat that. Hazrat Jibreel said, I'm going to take away the other two. Whichever one you take it, the other two will come back with me. When aql stays, then the other two don't leave. And Hazrat Jibreel looks at those two and says, come with me now. They say, no, O Jibreel, for Allah commanded us to stay wherever aql is. So aql and deen and haya will go together. Without aql, deen is what we see now. When you see people practicing deen without aql, this is what happens. We see that extremism, terrorism, murdering of humans, and lots of injustices occur. और सलाम है उस बेटे पर जिसने दरे खैमा से बीमारी के आलम में आशूर के दिन बाद असर कद कुतिल अल हुसैन की सदाएं सुनते हुए अपने बाबा के सर को नोके नेजा देखा। वो सज्जाद अलैहिस्सलाम जिन्होंने वो गम सहे जो यकीनन कौन देख सकता है और कौन सह सकता है। इमाम सज्जाद अक्सर कहा करते थे, अंगूठी को देख के रोते थे और अंगूठी को देख के रो के कहते थे कि ये इस अंगूठी का नगीने के बराबर भी मेरे बाबा के जिस्म पे जगह सालिम नहीं बची थी। हर जगह मेरे बाबा के जख्म लग चुके थे। जब पूछते थे लोग कितने जख्म खाए, वहां पे रिवाज था, जंग होती थी, कितने लोगों को किसी ने मारा, कितने जख्म खाए किसी ने, इमाम हुसैन ने कितने जख्म खाए। تو امام سجاد اس طرح سے جواب دیتے تھے کہ میرے بابا کے جسم پہ کوئی جگہ سالم نہیں بچی تھی، اب کون گن سکتا ہے وہ زخم؟ ہم کہہ دیتے ہیں 999، ہم کہہ دیتے ہیں 900، ہم کہہ دیتے ہیں کتنے، لیکن امام سجاد کہہ رہے ہیں کہ ایک جگہ سالم نہ بچی تھی۔ پھر کہا کہ میرے بابا کو لوگوں نے تلواروں سے مارا، تیروں سے مارا، نیزوں سے مارا، پتھروں سے مارا، جس کو جو ملتا تھا اس کے ذریعے سے میرے بابا پہ ظلم کیا، یہاں تک کہ عصاؤں سے مارا۔ جو سن رہے تھے صحابی حیران ہو گئے، کہا عصا سے مولا؟ مولا عصا سے کیسے مارا؟ امام کہتے ہیں کہ یزید کی فوج میں کئی جمعے کی نماز کے امام بلائے ہوئے تھے جو جمعے کی نماز پڑھاتے تھے۔ جب وقت نماز ہوا تو وہ سب میدان میں آ گئے کہتے ہوئے کہ جلد سے جلد حسین کو مارو کہ اب ہمیں نماز پڑھنی ہے، حسین کو مار کے ہم نماز پڑھیں گے۔ لوگوں نے پوچھا مولا یہ بتائیے، ہم نے یہ سن رکھا ہے کہ آپ کے بابا کو ذبح کیا تھا تو خنجر پس گردن تھا، پھر کوئی کہتا ہے کہ خنجر آگے سے چلا تھا، ہم نے یہ تو سنا ہے کہ 13 ضربیں لگی تھی، بس ہم یہ بتا دیجیے ان دونوں روایتوں میں سے کون سی روایت صحیح ہے؟ تو امام رو کے فرماتے ہیں کہ دونوں روایتیں صحیح ہیں۔ ایک پہلے شمر نے سجدے کی حالت میں ضربیں مارنا شروع کی تھی، اور پھر کئی ضربوں کے بعد جب امام سجدے کی حالت میں چلے گئے تھے تو پھر آخری ضربے شمر نے پش سے ماری، مثل گوسفند ذبح کیا میرے بابا کو۔ الصلاۃ والسلام علی النبی وعلی اولاد النبی وآل النبی فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين۔ بار الہ جن مرحومین کی سال کے لیے یہ مجلس رکھی گئی ہے ان کی درجات کو بلند فرما، ان کو جوارہ معصومین میں جگہ عنایت فرما، جو پریشان حال ہیں ان کی پریشانی کو دور فرما، جو بے اولاد ہیں ان کو نیک اولاد عطا فرما، جو بے روزگار ہیں ان کو رزق حلال عطا فرما، ہم سب کی توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما، ہمارے علم، ہمارے ایمان، ہماری معرفت، ہماری اطاعت، ہمارے امام سے عہد کو قائم رکھنا فرما، اور ان سب چیزوں میں برکت عطا فرما۔ آخر میں آپ سے التماس سے سورہ فاتحہ ہے، آپ سے گزارش ہے کہ سید مصطفیٰ علی، آپ سے گزارش ہے کہ سید مصطفیٰ اکبر ابن سید علی اکبر کی روحوں کے لیے، سید مصطفیٰ علی موسفی، سید ریاضت علی جعفری، طیبہ جعفری، سید مہدی حسن جعفری، سیدہ جعفری، سکینہ جعفری، سید صالح موسفی، سید کاظم حسین موسفی، جملہ مرحومین کے لیے ایک دفعہ سورہ فاتحہ، 3 دفعہ سورۃ الاخلاص۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، الحمدللہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین، ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین اهدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، قل هو اللہ احد اللہ الصمد لم یلد ولم یولد ولم یکن له کفوا احد۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، قل هو اللہ احد الصمد لم یلد ولم یولد قل هو اللہ احد اللہ الصمد لم یلد ولم یولد ولم یکن له۔ Assalamu alaikum, sisters and brothers. Thanks for joining us today to another informative session by Maulana Shaeba Rizvi. And we are opening the floor for question answers, and any suggestions you have, please come forward, and we start the session here for question answers. Jazakallah.
Maulana, Assalamu alaikum. This is Hussein Jafri.
وعلیکم السلام حسین صاحب۔
جی تو مولانا میں ایک سیشن میں ہوں توحید کے تھیولوجی 1 اور تھیولوجی 2 پہ. تو ایک سجیشن ہمارے پارٹیسپینٹ یہ دیے تھے کہ اگر سلائڈس جو یوز کرتے ہیں مولانا حسن نام ہے ان کا، اگر وہ پہلے پوسٹ کرے تو جو اسٹوڈنٹس ہیں ان کو ایک موقع ملیں گا کہ دے کین گو اوور دا سلائڈس اینڈ مینٹلی پریپیئر. تو آئی ڈونٹ نو، میں آپ کو زحمت دے دینا چاہ رہا ہوں، مگر اگر سہولت اگر ہے تو لیٹس سے اگر ایک دن پہلے اگر سلائڈس پوسٹ کر سکے انشاءاللہ، تو ہم لوگوں کو موقع مل جائے گا کہ وی مینٹلی ایکچولی پریپیئر اینڈ نو واٹس کمنگ اینڈ تھنک اباؤٹ اٹ اینڈ سو فورتھ. بٹ دس از جسٹ سجیشن مولانا. I completely understand your constraints and your time constraints. تو جی مولانا بہت بہت شکریہ مولانا، بہت شکریہ، جزاک اللہ.
Thank you. Ji, bilkul Hussain Saab. And that is a great suggestion. And I have been, I think, forwarding maybe like the Word document or something. The PowerPoint would be much better. So inshallah, from next week, I will definitely follow that great advice.
Thank you, Maulana.
السلام علیکم سر. سر پھر آ گیا آپ کو تنگ کرنے، پھر آ گیا. نہیں سر، وہ آپ کہہ رہے تھے کہ اس میں جو ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے جو انسان جب تک اس میں روح نہیں پھونکی اپنی، اس وقت نہیں کہا سجدہ کے لیے، ٹھیک ہے. تو اللہ تعالیٰ نے جنات کو بھی پیدا کیا اور اینجلس کو بھی بنایا. کیا اللہ تعالیٰ نے اپنی روح کا مطلب جیسا انسان کے لیے کہا گیا کہ میں اپنی روح اس میں روح ڈال رہا ہوں، تو کیا یہ جنات میں بھی اور اینجلس میں بھی اپنی روح کا کوئی ایسا آنسر، کوئی ایسے فیکٹر ڈالا تھا یا ان کو اس میں ایسا کوئی ذکر نہیں آیا قرآن میں یا احادیث وغیرہ میں؟ کیونکہ سر
حضور آپ کے سوال
اللہ تعالیٰ نے پریفرنس دے دی انسان کو.
آپ کے سوال دعوت فکر دیتے ہیں واقعا، اور I really look forward کہ آپ کوئی کوشچن پوچھیں، کیونکہ پھر پورے ہفتے اس کے بارے میں سوچتا ہی رہتا ہوں، اور یقیناً اس کے بارے میں بھی سوچنا پڑے گا، اور میں ڈھونڈوں گا ضرور، کیونکہ آپ کا سوال واقعا امیزنگ ہے. اب یہ کہیں ایسی آیت نظر سے نہیں گزری جس میں کریشن آف جن کا ہو یا کریشن آف اینجل کا ہو سکتا ہے احادیث میں نیریشنز میں کوئی ایسی ہو جو نظر سے نہ گزری ہو جس میں یہ ایکسپلین کیا ہو. تو آئی تھنک کہ ہاں ڈیفینیٹیو آنسر تو بالکل بھی نہیں دے سکتا. اگر ہم اس کو یہ دیکھیں اس لحاظ سے کہ اگر انٹلیکٹ از پارٹ آف دا روح، اور پھر انٹلیکٹ کے لیے جو ہے ضروری ہے کہ روح ہو، تو پھر we would have to assume جن کے پاس انٹلیکٹ ہے that seems like it is. اور اینجلس کو بھی انٹلیکٹ دیا. دوسری حدیث میں ہمیں ملتا ہے کہ عقل مثلاً جو ہے انسانوں کو دی اور فرشتوں کو دی، لیکن فرشتوں کے پاس وہ ڈیزائرز نہیں تھے اور ہمارے پاس تھے، تو یہ فرق تھا. لیکن انٹلیکٹ ہے اینجلس کے پاس، ابلیس کے پاس بھی انٹلیکٹ ہے. تو that would I think indicate that yes.
سر انٹلیکٹ اور روح ایک چیز ہے، الگ چیز ہے؟
سو جو باب العقل میں جتنی باتیں انٹلیکٹ کے بارے میں کی گئی ہیں، اس سے انٹلیکٹ کی جگہ کا نہیں پتہ چلتا. انٹلیکٹ ہے کہاں پہ؟ ایک طرف تو ایسا لگتا ہے کہ بعض حدیثوں کے لحاظ سے لگتا ہے کہ انٹلیکٹ جو ہے وہ قلب میں ہے، اور فواد نہیں بلکہ جو میٹا فزیکل ہارٹ ہے قلب میں ہے. لیکن اس بات میں جو پہلے سرمن میں آ رہا ہے، اس سے لگ رہا ہے کہ ایک ساتھ پھونک دیا گیا. لیکن جو امیر المومنین نے کہا اس سے یہ ضروری نہیں ہوتا. سپوز کریں ہم کہ انٹلیکٹ از ایکچولی ان دا روح، بلکہ کیونکہ جب ہم دیکھتے ہیں کہ موت کے بعد بھی انٹلیکٹ رہتا ہے، لیکن کہا جاتا ہے کہ روح جو ہے اس وقت ڈسکنیکٹ ہو جاتی ہے باڈی اور روح، تو لیکن انٹلیکٹ پھر بھی رہتا ہے. تو اس لحاظ سے انٹلیکٹ از اسٹیئنگ آفٹر دا فزیکل باڈی از گون، تو اس لحاظ سے شاید روح میں ہے انٹلیکٹ. اب یہ قلب جو ہے یہ بھی مسٹیریس ہے، کیونکہ یہ میٹا فزیکل ہے، اور یہ ہمارے نہ نفس کا حصہ نظر آتا ہے اور ڈائریکٹلی روح کا حصہ بھی کسی نے نہیں کہا شاید, یا نظروں سے نہیں گزرا ہے, لیکن اس بات سے لگتا ہے کہ شاید یہ میٹافزیکل قلب بھی is part of the روحانی level of our body, not at the nafs level, not at the physical level. The physical, the nafs پھر روح.
So ایک سوال اور تھا میرا, I think this is the last point. Sir, یہ کہتے ہیں کہ جب اینجل سے کہا گیا رسول خدا کو اور ان کے نام پوچھے گئے تو وہ نہیں بتا سکے, رائٹ, مطلب this is a concept. لیکن ہم رسول خدا کی حدیث کو دیکھیں تو اس سے پوچھا کہ آدم سے پہلے کیا تھا, ان کا جی آدم, اس سے الفا آدم, اس سے پہلے میرا نور موجود تھا اور ہم اللہ کی تسبیح کرتے تھے اور ہم نے ہی فرشتوں کو تسبیح سکھائی. Am I right? تو پھر جب رسول تھے, رسول اس وقت بھی رسول تھے, انہوں نے فرشتوں کو تسبیح سکھائی, تو how come فرشتے کہہ رہے کہ جی we cannot recognize who is he?
Absolutely. صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں آپ.
I think here the issue is that intellect, there is an interaction between knowledge and intellect, right? So from intellect alone, knowledge issues. So the fact that Hazrat Adam knew the knowledge, jo ke ilm diya gaya tha, and the angels didn't have that, and the jinns didn't have that.
If we go forward with that idea, the problem will be is Allah will not be just. اگر اللہ کی عدالت پہ سوال آ جائے گا کہ بھئی اگر اللہ نے وہ سبق ان کو نہیں سکھایا ہے تو پھر اس کا سوال ہی کیسا. مگر آپ کا جو سوال تھا علی عباس صاحب, میں اگر اجازت ہے تو عرض کروں, یہ فرشتوں کے لیے پہلا مقام تھا جہاں پر 5 انوار ایک ساتھ جمع تھے. یہ اس سے پہلے جب ان فرشتوں کا انٹریکشن ائمہ کے انوار سے ہوا تھا, یہ 1 at a time ہوا تھا. مگر اب جب اللہ نے یہ سارے نوروں کو ایک ساتھ ان کے سامنے ظاہر کیا تو اب یہ کون سا نور ہے پہچان نہیں سکے, یہ محمد کا ہے, یہ علی کا ہے, یہ فاطمہ, یہ حسن حسین کا. یہ قابلیت حضرت آدم نے کی, حضرت آدم میں تھی, اور انہوں نے ان انوار کا تعارف کروایا سب فرشتوں کو خدا کی موجودگی میں. تو پھر اس جو ہے اشرف المخلوقات.
ہاں, ٹو کنٹینیو دی ڈسکشن جو ابھی بھائی بولے کہ حدیث قصہ میں ہم سنتے ہیں, رائٹ, کہ جبرائیل, حضرت جبرائیل when یہ 5 ایک جگہ جمع ہوئے تو بیسکلی آج who are these. آپ حدیث کتاب کے اگر آپ ورسز اگر آپ دیکھیں, رائٹ, تو اس میں حضرت جبرائیل کو تو مطلب he was the top angel, but he could not recognize as to who they are. تو پھر پھر شہزادی کے جناب سے کہتے کہ بھئی ابو ہا و بانی ہا, وہ جو مولانا can expand on that. تو that's an excellent point ہمارے جو یونس ابھی کرے. اور پھر اشرف المخلوقات بھی, I think one was said کہ بھئی among all the creations, humans were given the ashraful makhluqat because they could handle what the angels and the jinn refused to handle or
were unable to handle.
Exactly, unable to handle. اور پھر امام حسین علیہ السلام کا بھی یہ ہے نا کہ بھئی امام حسین علیہ السلام کا مقام اس کے لیے ہائی ہے because there was a point where no one was willing to take the the test that only Imam Hussain alayhi salam said. And then of course when it comes to like Parda being taken away, Bibi Zainab joined and said, "Bhai, I'll be ready also." Shariqat al-Hussain. So there are Maulana can explain. I think I've said too much.
No, absolutely not. You didn't say too much. You said exactly what I was going to say. So that's why I was smiling, because you took the words out of my mouth. I have nothing to add. As Yunus Bhai was giving that explanation, immediately I was thinking of Hazrat Jibreel, and maybe it's a reinforcement of that, where he's like, وَمَنْ تَحْتَ الْكِسَى, the one who is bringing revelations every day to this household, who sees everybody. Now when the noor is there, وَمَنْ تَحْتَ الْكِسَى. So absolutely, we see that, and the correlation. And indeed, we would say that, نَحْنُ نُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, we are the ones who are reading your tasbih. So we're saying your name, we're singing your praise. But there may also be a difference in the level of understanding. So what they were doing was definitely, نَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ, وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, we are doing your tasbih, and we are saying. So this was when the angels would say subuhun quddusun, right? Which is words, which is worship. The angels are in ruku, the angels are in sujood, the angels are in qiyam. They are following every command of Allah. There is nothing, in the heavens and skies that does not worship Allah in some form or another. So we see that everything, when it follows its nature, it is also worshiping Allah. With the angels, if you note, these are physical acts of worship. There is not a mention of their intellectual capacity or their ma'rifah of Allah or their understanding and comprehension, but rather what we see is that what they are bringing forward is acts. They're not saying, oh, we have knowledge. They are saying, we do tasbih. We say subuhun quddusun, and Allah is prioritizing ilm. So Hazrat Adam's ilm and his awareness of Allah was not a physical thing. In fact, Hazrat Adam hasn't done a physical thing yet. He has not even done a sajda or ruku to Allah yet. He has not worshipped him. He has not read the Quran. He has not kept a roza. He has not done hajj and gone between Safa and Marwa. He has done no physical act. But the first thing he does is to show the knowledge and the understanding he has of the Ma'sumin and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it may be the depth of understanding. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us here that, look, the acts are acts, but this is what I want. This is superior. So you must worship with that. So, oh angels, you worship me, but it is not with the ma'rifat level that this one will have. This one is going to worship me with that level. But still, I mean, I think it's a great question. It's something that, I would love to think about more and, look into more. It's a fascinating tale, and every time you talk about it, jitni dafa baat kare is mawzu pe, is situation pe, har dafa kitni nayi baatein nikalti hain. और खैर अली अब्बास साहब के तो सवाल वैसे ही
सर देखिए अगर हम अलिफ लाम सूरह अलिफ लाम में पढ़ें तो स्टार्ट से होता है कि you have to believe in ला रहे जब तक हम बिलीफ ला रहे दो चीजें से ला रहे हो और वो अल्लामा तालिब जोहरी साहब अच्छा पढ़ते थे तो कहते थे ये तो कुरान तुम्हारी तो है ही नहीं कुरान तो मुत्तकियों के लिए पहले मुत्तकी बनो फिर कुरान को समझो तो पहले दो चीजें ला रहे you have to believe in ला रहे the first thing is जो हुआ है ऐसी ही बस and then you have to go towards to be a muttaqi to understand the Quran and its verses. Sir, एक गुजारिश और थी sir last, if you don't mind. Sir, कुछ मेरे ज़हन हमेशा नेगेटिव रहता है, I don't know why. Sir, हम लोग इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन अलैहिस्सलाम के बारे में इतना कम क्यों बोलते हैं या क्यों बोला जाता है? देखिए इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन अलैहिस्सलाम मदीने से निकलते हैं, करबला तक आते हैं, उनका कहीं पर भी जिक्र नहीं है। काबे में मक्के में 4 महीने रहे, वहां कोई जिक्र नहीं। करबला में आखिर दिन आपको मिलता है कि जब उनका जिक्र आता है, इमामत दी जाती है, फिर उनका 1-2 महीने का क़याम रहता है, 1.5-2 साल का जो क़याम है पैगंबर का, फिर मदीने में आते हैं। मदीने में आने के बाद उनका सिर्फ एक है कि ये वो उनको बुलाते हैं अपने निदा करने वाले को, वो आके पैगाम देता है कि ये काफिला आ गया। उसके बाद इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन जो है सिर्फ 3 जगह पे, या तो उनको हम एज ए बड़े पैथेटिक कंडीशन में देखते हैं, सॉरी टू यूज द वर्ड, बस वर्ड नहीं है कि भाई वो अपने वालिद के और तमाम लोगों की गिरफ्तारी में लगे थे। हालांकि सर इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन तकरीबन 7 खिलाफ जो भी खलीफा थे, जो भी थे उस ज़माने में, उनका दौर देखे पूरी इमामत। I mean he was an imam, right? He was the Imam of the creation, all the creation, जितना creation है सब किस समय हम इनको इतने low profile में क्यों रखते हैं सर? Basically मैं कभी दोस्तों से बात करता हूँ बड़े साइड से, हमारे पास सिर्फ 3 इमाम हैं, हज़रत अली हैं जो तलवार लेके लड़ते हैं या खुतबे देते हैं, इमाम हुसैन है जो फिर हम देखते हैं कि वो तलवार लिए हुए हैं, या फिर इमाम हाजिर इमाम है जो आके बदला लेंगे. I mean दूसरे इमामों के बारे में we are not so, ऐसा नहीं होता कि इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन का आएगा जिक्र हम लोग बड़े उसमें चले जाएंगे, इमाम हसन का जिक्र आएगा हम लोग वो एकदम स्ट्राइक करेगा मुआविया के साथ दोनों एक महाजा. I mean why this हमें इमाम के साथ क्यों ऐसा अलग अलग रखते हैं कि अव्वल मोहम्मद औसत मोहम्मद आखिर मोहम्मद. तो सिर्फ एक गुजारिश थी मेरी कि आप क्या हुसैन में पढ़ें, इतिहाद में पढ़ें, इंशाअल्लाह पढ़ें हुसैन अहमदिया. तो सर इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन सर कुछ ज्यादा बताएं कि हाउ वाज दिस पीरियड, क्योंकि उनका पीरियड सर बहुत मुसीबत का पार्ट, पूरे सैयदों को जिस तरह से मारा गया, जिस तरह से जिंदानों में डाला गया, वो एक बहुत ही वो मतलब अलमनाक दौर है शियों के लिए. उसके बारे में सर कभी भी मैं कभी नहीं सुना मजालिस में हम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन के साथ में सिवाय 5-6 वाक़यात के अलावा कोई और मतलब आई मीन समथिंग उनके फतवे होंगे कुछ ना कुछ तो होगा ऐसे इमाम.
नहीं, सहीफ़े सज्जादिया मौजूद है जिसमें
सबसे सहीफ़े सज्जादिया उनकी दुआओं की किताब है, नमाजें हैं, दुआएं, ओके फबीला, दैट्स वेरी ग्रेट थिंग. ऐसे इमाम सब कुछ फतवे होंगे, कुछ लोग आके उनसे पूछते होंगे. आई मीन उन 7 खलीफों का दौर देखें सर.
सही बात है, बिल्कुल सही बात है, आपने बिल्कुल दुरुस्त फरमाया. ये बात सब जिस तरह हक तो अदा हो ही नहीं सकता, बहुत सी चीजें नहीं बयान होती. जाहिर है कि एक तो ये है कि वो जो हमारे मजालिस हैं, जब हम मिलते हैं, तारीखें होती हैं, उस एतबार से प्रॉब्ली अयाम अज़म में वैसे भी इमाम का नाम आता है, इमाम सज्जाद अलैहिस्सलाम को, तो वैसे आंखों में आंसू आ जाते हैं. लोग फजाइल भी सुनते हैं तो वो मसाइब की कैफियत तारी हो जाती है. शायद ये वजूहात भी हों, प्रॉब्ली हिस्टोरिकली चलने की कोशिश करते हैं तो उनके जो है हम बयान कर देते हैं, क्योंकि हम अयाम अज़ा में हैं, अमूमन को सुनते हैं, तो अयाम अज़ा में जो हम बयान करते हैं वो अमूमन वही होता है जो जुल्म सितम सहे उन्होंने और जिस तरह से सब कुछ बचाया उन्होंने. लेकिन अगर मसलन थ्रू आउट द ईयर आप खास तौर पे आई थिंक उनके लिए खास तौर पे उनके जो अयाम हैं, या तो उनके ज़हूर के या शहादत के 4-5 दिन 10 दिन खास तौर पे उनके लिए हो, तो यकीनन वाक़यात हैं. और आप सही कह रहे हैं, उनका बहुत अहम रोल है जिस तरह से शियों को बचाया, जिस तरह से उन्होंने उस वक्त के जालिम हुक्मरानों के जिस तरह से उन्होंने डील किया और जिस तरह से उन्होंने शियों की तरबियत की यकीनन. और फिर बहुत से उनके मौजज़ात भी हैं, कई मौजज़ात हैं, तो बहुत से रिवायात हैं और किस्से हैं जो हम नहीं आते.
और आप इमाम के ज़माने में ही ज़्यादातर ख़याम जो हुए हैं खिलाफ, वो ज़्यादातर इमाम के ज़माने में हुए. उन ख़यामों का कोई जिक्र है कि कितने लोग गए इमाम से पूछ के जाके खिलाफ खड़े हुए, जंग की. मतलब आई मीन दिस होल हिस्ट्री जो है ना, ठीक है मैं आपकी बात मानता हूँ कि अयाम के ज़माने होते तो हम लोग बड़े कंजस्ट और बड़े प्रिसाइज होना पड़ता है, लेकिन आई मीन कभी तो
I think हर इमाम अपने अपने ज़माने के हिसाब से did resistance. In Imam Zainul Abidin there is resistance to du'as, and if you look at what Hazrat Mukhtar has done, it was all under the guidance and directions of Imam Zainul Abidin. Mukhtar Nama literally nearly everywhere hota hai, or, the revolution, Islamic revolution was able to develop a lot of films related to it, but more mazloom I think are even the imams beyond, like for example, we hardly know anything of our, I would say from 9th to 11th imam are the most mazlooms if you really look at historical perspectives, at least because of Karbala, because of things that happened post Karbala. We still know more about Imam Zainul Abidin than, say, for example, Imam Naqi or Imam Taqi, So, in general, what your point is absolutely right, but it needs more emphasis.
They had the wisdom that what Humbar was saying. They had the wisdom of knowing when to take the talwar out and when to keep it in khayam. Because you may remember that and Maulana can expand on this, in the early stages, there was someone from the family of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam who stood up, and Imam warned, this is not the right time. And with the result that several people were, I don't know what the right word is, killed or martyred. And I think I'm trying to remember the name of someone close to Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, who said, "Well, I want to take revenge now." Now, the other thing that is also missing is that